Good afternoon, everyone. And the Heritage Foundation's Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom is very pleased to be joined by all of you for today's discussion on partnership with Finland and Sweden. Such an extremely important partnership that has been strengthened over the past few years over agreements, exercises, and we hope to continue to move that partnership forward in the next 4 years ahead. And we're very grateful to be joined by two very distinguished panelists who I'll briefly introduce. First, Maria Tilpai, who is the Defense Counselor at the Embassy of Finland here in Washington. Previously, she was Ministerial Advisor on U.S. cooperation at the Defense Policy Department in the Finnish Ministry of Defense, as well as Ministerial Advisor on EU Defense Fund and industrial issues at the MOD. Mari received her Master of Science in International Relations from the University of Helsinki and her Master of Science in Management from Aalto University's School of Economics. She has served in a number of defense and political posts, including counselor to the EU's delegation to the UN, as well as 5 years as a counselor in the Prime Minister's office. And Mari, we're so happy to be joined by you today. With us as well is Magnus Bergman, who is the defense counselor at the Embassy of Sweden to the United States. Mr. Bergman took his Master of Laws at Uppsala University in Sweden. He has also studied American foreign and security policy at the American University in Washington, D.C., and is an officer in the Swedish Air Force Reserve. His career has included roles as defense counselor at the permanent representative of Sweden at the EU. More recently, Magnus has served in a number of roles within the Ministry of Defense, including head of section for operations at the Department for Military Capability and Operations, the deputy head of Department for Military Capability and Operations, and subsequently was appointed deputy director for general and head of department. Magnus, we thank you as well for joining us. So to kickstart our discussions, at this point, I'm going to hand the floor over to Mari for some opening thoughts. Mari, over to you.
Thank you so much, Daniel, and thank you to the Heritage Foundation for this very timely discussion. Thanks for your interest in the Baltic Sea region and in the partnership between the US, Finland, and Sweden, this trilateral partnership, which is a very important partnership for us. Let me first start by saying that the Finnish government just published the new report on foreign and security policy, and that obviously is a key document defining some of our goals and priorities in the field of foreign and security policy. It's still being discussed in the Parliament at the moment, but it's basically all the questions that we're discussing here today are obviously part of that report. Basically, the issue of the Baltic Sea region, obviously, we've noticed the changes, the increasing great power competition is obviously also having an impact on the Baltic Sea region. It is considered more unstable at the moment, and we all need to be very careful about the future development. The way we are approaching the state of play is naturally by keeping our defense strong, by enhancing our defense capabilities, and at the same time enhancing cooperation with our partners in a number of different formats at the moment. Naturally, the EU is a key framework, key partner community for us. NATO, our partnership with NATO is naturally an important feature. Then in particular, the topic of today, the trilateral cooperation partnership with these countries, as well as our bilateral partnership with Sweden as well. They're all very relevant. They're all contributing to stability and security in the Baltic Sea region. One of the in addition, obviously, I mentioned our strong aim to maintain our defense strong. We have just increased our military expenditure, our budget for next year, by a sizable amount, basically 50%. And the expenditure amounts to about 2.2% at the moment for next year. Obviously, one of the big reasons is the acquisition that we're preparing, the replacement for the future replacement of the fighter fleet, the important acquisition, which obviously shows also our intent to keep the defense very, very strong. When it comes to the partnerships, I think we've all just read also the new NATO reflection report 2030, which was published yesterday. That also shows the importance of partnerships. It's a very interesting report. It emphasizes also the need to continue to develop partnerships and also keep the open door policy, which is an important feature of NATO as well. The political dialogue with the US, with NATO, all those are very essential elements for also keeping the stability in the Baltic Sea region. So let me finish there for the short introduction, and then I'm very happy to continue this discussion with my Swedish colleague and with the audience, potential questions from the audience. Very happy to be here today. Thank you, Daniela.
Thank you so much, Mari. That was a wonderful way to set the scene. Thank you for discussing some of the recent developments in Finland. At this time, I'd like to pass the floor over to Magnus. Magnus, wonderful to see you as well. Thank you for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Well, I'll try to pick up where Mari left off as well, but I wanted to give you a little bit of a background to where we are in Sweden right now on our new defense bill. We have been drafting this defense bill for the entire year, and it is based upon white books from the Defense Commission of Sweden. The Defense Commission is a parliamentary committee which assembles under the heading of the Ministry for Defense. The committee is extended by experts from agencies and the armed forces alike. And it has delivered two white papers, you can say, one on civil defense and one on military defense. And those two have been amalgamated, you can say, into the new defense bill that will cover the years 2021 until 2025. So it's a 5-year plan altogether for the defense. When dealing with this, we have decided to put a lot of emphasis on increased spending for defense, both for the civil and for the military side of defense. And the reason for this is basically only one word. It is Russia. It is the deteriorated security policy situation in the Baltic Sea region. And I would say in Europe as in general, the situation has deteriorated and continue to deteriorate with the happenings, of course, that you can see in Belarus and in Ukraine. So for us, this is something that has been going on for quite some time. We know, of course, that the illegal annexation of Crimea continues to violate the European security order, and it shows the Russian willingness to use military force in order to gain political goals. And this is something that we can see elsewhere as well. Taking in the increased military activity in the Baltic Sea region and the high north, over the last years. I think most importantly, you can say that Russia is continuing to its military buildup in our vicinity, in the Baltic Sea region and in the high north, and in the Arctic as well, for that matter. And it is conducting hybrid activities against other states as we speak, including Sweden and Finland. What we have come to is in our dealings with the new defense bill, the conclusions from the security policy analysis is that an armed attack against Sweden cannot be excluded, and nor can we exclude the use of military means or threat of use of military means against us. And of course, it goes without saying that in the event of an armed conflict arising in our neighborhood, in the Baltic Sea area or in the high north, Sweden will inevitably be affected by that. And this is why we come to the fact that we will build security together with others. We will build it in multilateral and bilateral cooperations. I think you all know that we have the closest cooperation together with our neighbor Finland. And we do integrated operational planning together, Sweden and Finland, to be able to answer to the security needs of the Baltic Sea region. And of course, we're a member of the EU and the UN, and then, as Mari said, an enhanced opportunities partner to NATO. And coming to this, we have also decided and stated in the new defense bill that we would like to coordinate our own national operational planning and contingency planning together with other nations. We would like to do it with, of course, the Nordics, Norway and Denmark, but also then UK, US and NATO as an organization. And this is a way of course, preparing for the event of having to work together in our vicinity. With Finland, we're one step ahead of that, of course, as we do integrated operational planning together. I think also that the trilateral cooperation between Sweden, Finland and the US is of major importance to the regional stability in the Baltic Sea area, and also, of course, for the continued improvement of capability and capacity to join forces in a strained environment, should that be necessary for us to act together to repel any adversaries from our territory or territories. So this is some of the foundations for the new defense bill. The new defense bill comprises an increase in 40% of our defense budget. So it's a 40% increase up until 2025 without buying new fighter jets. But we do buy quite a lot of other stuff, among them Patriot systems from the US, as I'm sure you're aware. So this spending will, of course, be on the acquisition side, but it will also be on training and enlargement of the organization, the wartime organization as such. So it is a larger armed forces structure that we foresee in the future. And of course, it is a major also drive to reinstate the civil defense aspect of our total defense concept in Sweden, something that we have to rebuild, having abolished that system altogether in the last few decades. Finland is ahead of us there, I can say, because they have kept their system in the civil defense area, and we will now, of course, look towards Finland to get it back again in Sweden. So this is something that we strive together. And just to coming back to the trilateral setting, the Sweden, Finland, US setting, I think this is something also that is very good for the US to understand the deepening of the defense cooperation that we have between Sweden and Finland in the Baltic Sea and for the Baltic Sea security. So I'll stop there, not to monopolize the time here.
Thank you. That was wonderful. I really appreciate both of your opening comments. As I said, the U.S. cooperation, I think, with Finland, Sweden is really a wonderful example of US engagement with partners to build security in a very important region for the US. So there's a lot of different directions we could take this conversation. Perhaps first, if we just talk about threats, we talked about, of course, Russia is the preeminent threat in the Baltic Sea region, represents a real military threat. Russia also, of course, uses these sort of lower level simmering activities, military activities, GPS jamming, calling last minute live fire exercises in the Baltic, flying or in your airspace or sailing in your seas. What is the best way you think to sort of counter those actions? And then related, do you think that the ongoing crackdown in Belarus has fundamentally shifted the security picture in the Baltic Sea region, or how do you see that impacting it, if at all?
Yeah, if I go first, let me first say that I really appreciated Magnus also describing the situation in the Baltic Sea. Obviously, the same factors apply to us and our thinking as well. When it comes to the Russian sort of lower level activities and influencing, I think I guess we have to see them as part of the sort of broader set of measures or activities they may use, and this is obviously an example of reasons why the tensions are rising and why the region is considered more unstable. I think the same goes, needless to say, the same goes very much with the Belarus. I mean, that's an example of the activity that can just add to the instability. I wouldn't sort of go into details, but obviously we see that the best way to respond, or best way to be prepared to the unstable situations and increasing instability is to be ready and to prepare, to be resilient, to enhance the resilience in a wider way, including many sectors in the society. So I really see that it's part of, or we see in Finland that it's part of the this sort of a wide overall preparedness, where you then are able to counter to this sort of a broad set of influencing, be it hybrid, be it cyber, be it disinformation. So that's how we see it. When you refer to the some of the measures like the airspace incidents, one of the measures we always take is to make it public. Obviously, that's a valid sort of a method when it comes to different type of influencing attempts or operations. The question of attribution is an important one in hybrid influencing and so forth. And making things public is one of the ways, obviously, to deal with it.
Just to quickly add a few things to that, I think the effect of the events in Belarus and what is going on there between Russia and Belarus as well, and the Russian involvement, I think this is yet another example of the undemocratic nature, of course, of the regime in Belarus, and of course the Russian influence on that regime in Belarus. And of course we all know that Russia is acting covertly and or even overtly in Belarus, and of course this affects the security situation as a whole in the Baltic Sea area. But it's yet another example, I would say, of what is going on and what has been going on, which stems out of Moscow and Russia, for that sake. And when it comes to countering the harassments or so in the Baltic Sea, I think showing presence and, as Mari said, of course, also attribute those harassments the perpetrator, but I think showing presence, and again, the trilateral and our respective bilateral cooperation in terms of exercises, air exercises, naval exercises, etc., are very good means of actually showing presence, not only from our side in the area, but also from the US side. So this is something that we can do together, and to send a clear message that we do protect our own borders, we watch out for each other, and also we protect the right to maneuver on the high seas.
Thank you. That's a great segue into my next question is about the partnership, the trilateral partnership with the United States. In 2018, our three nations signed a statement of intent to strengthen defense cooperation. And I think at the time, a couple of Russian officials threatened retaliation for Finland and Sweden signing this agreement with the US. Could you discuss some of the specific ways in which this agreement has led to deeper cooperation in the last few years? One of the questions we already received from our audience is about specifically exercises that are ongoing. I know there's a number of these exercises which have taken place. I think about the Aurora exercises over the last few years in particular around Gotland. So would be curious if you could perhaps tie that into your discussion of the agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think first of all, what the trilateral cooperation and partnership demonstrates for the US, or from the US point of view, I think it's a great example of how the national defense strategy has been defining the importance of the allied and partners for the US itself, and for acting based on shared interests in particular regions, where every side is a winner in a way in these type of partnerships. We definitely value this feature of the national defense strategy, and hope that can be developed further also under the new administration, I'm sure. It certainly has provided a new impetus and new basis for cooperation between our countries. You mentioned exercises. There are obviously a number of exercises. There's more sort of a systematic or deeper political dialogue. There's cooperation in terms of situational awareness, more sort of in the more cooperation in the field of intelligence. So it's a partnership that provides for many opportunities and many further activities as well. Just to leave it there. Thank you at this point.
Thank you. Magnus, do you have anything to add on that question?
Maybe just adding to, of course, I agree with Mari here that this is a forum for discussion, and a very good forum for also taking the cooperation further. Of course, we have a policy dialogue included in this trilateral statement of intent, but there's also the possibility, of course, to engage more in practical terms between the respective armed forces, most notably on the exercise field, of course, and in training. On the exercise field, it is, as I mentioned as a response to the previous question, the air exercises and naval exercises that are ongoing and have been conducted in the Baltic Sea area. But also, I would say, other exercises where there are more participants. We use those exercises as a means to enhance, of course, the trilateral partnership as well. So we're not locked into only a trilateral setting, but we can use those other exercises as well as a driving factor for improving the and exploiting the cooperation regime within the trilateral setting. And of course, I mean, there's Arctic Challenge exercise, which we do together with Norway, with a strong support from the US Air Force as well, and from US Air Force Europe. and then we have the various exercises in the Baltic Sea area, where we have a lot of naval activities. As soon as the US is flying in support of the Baltic states, and of course doing Baltic air policing missions, then we have regularly been training together and exercising together with US forces from both Sweden and from Finland. So it's a means of also to be able to take the opportunities as they come, to enhance our training together and to enhance our interoperability when it comes to acting in and around our area in the Baltic Sea.
Thank you. We had a question along these similar lines, your partnership with the other Nordic countries. So Nordefco, can you talk a little bit about that framework and sort of how that fits into the security picture and how you're thinking about regional security?
Thanks. Happy to, of course. As I referred to in the beginning, there are a number of different multilateral arrangements and different formats also in our region. And the Nordic cooperation is naturally a very important one. Also, Nordics cooperating with the Baltic states as well. The Nordefco, as such, is obviously a way to deal with different regions as well, in the sense that the Baltic Sea region also links to the High North and North Atlantic in that cooperation, and that's something that we strongly sort of advocate in whenever it comes to partnership at NATO, whenever it comes to different formats. All these regions link together, and the dynamics link together, no matter how separate someone might see them, but they're not separate in our view. So Nordefco, if I may say, will be assuming the chairmanship next year, and that's a year-long effort every time for each of us. Obviously, one of the key features also in that cooperation is the link to the transatlantic link, the link to the US also, and various activities will be done during our year of chairmanship as well. It's also sometimes meeting with other countries, which is called the Northern Group, meeting with the UK, with Germany. So it shows that all these different arrangements, basically, they're partly overlapping, they're partly separate, but the existence of these various formats add to dialogue, add to cooperation, interoperability, and this enhanced security in many ways.
Magnus, do you have anything else you'd like to add on that topic?
Well, basically only to say that the Nordefco cooperation is designed in a way that we can do things together, all the 5 of us, or we can do things with only 2 member states of the Nordefco agreeing to do a separate project or pursue something. So it's an inclusive format where we do not have to do everything, everyone at the same time. And that's why we also can enhance the bilateral relationships and the trilateral relationships within the Nordefco sphere without having to have all members in on it. And I would say that is something that is shown by the example of cross-border training, as we have in the northern parts of Finland, Sweden, and Norway, where we weekly, I would say, we fly training missions and use 3 different air bases in 3 different countries. And the US has been training with us in cross-border training activities for a number of times as well. So this is something where we can invite others, and we do it under the heading of the NORDEFCO, but it is a down up, you can say, a bottom up perspective from the Air Forces actually to create this training and exercise scheme in order to facilitate the maneuvering up north. So those are examples of things that you can do, but NORDEFCO is really something that we can use as a vehicle for advancing everything from policy and from policy statements to very practical cooperations and training, and also acquisition projects actually. So
that's great. We're getting quite a few questions from the audience. So a number of them have been on the question of China. So of course, Russia is the preeminent security threat in the region, but China really will be the sort of primary overarching challenge, I would say, for the transatlantic community, as we've seen, and I think it's going to be that way for the next few decades. So how do you envision your nations in the US and Europe, generally in the United States, working together to address the China question? Of course, both Finland and Sweden have important telecommunications firms, which are playing into this discussion a little bit in terms of 5G. So would be curious how we can more closely align our strategies in terms of dealing with the issue of a rising China and the security threats therein. Thanks.
Well, it's clearly one of the most important questions. As you said, for us, Russia very much exists. Sometimes you don't have a feeling here when you discuss with people that Russia exists. China is the dominant interest and challenge, and so it is also for Europe. I mean, we're clearly understanding the importance of China, but it may obviously be defined a bit differently. China is obviously a competitor, and it can be a partner in certain issues, but it's also considered this systemic rival for Europe as well. And we definitely have to find, we definitely have to talk about it in the transatlantic community and try to find a way. I think very symbolic of this is that yesterday in the NATO's foreign ministers meeting, Finland and Sweden and the EU were invited to the session which was discussing China. So that's how we participated in the NATO foreign ministers meeting. And it shows the importance of this transatlantic discussion. It shows the importance of finding a sort of common approach and finding a way. When you refer to the tech companies, that's obviously a demonstration of the challenge, how the technology security go together nowadays, are very much linked, and that is the question for future for all of us.
Yeah, I can just add there to what Mari said, that of course I believe that I mean Europe and the US has to work together on the technical systems, on the policy towards China when it comes to security interests and to national security interests in this very tech dominated field, of course. And I think that is actually the possibility for us together in the transatlantic setting between Europe and the US to push back on the Chinese efforts to create dependencies globally when it comes to tech and 5G, etc. And we will soon have 6G upon us, I guess. So all these things, there's an opportunity, I think, for Europe and the US to set the standards, to adhere to the standards, and then push back against the dominance that China would like to create in this sphere. And of course, I mean, as Mari said, we get get that China is at the top of the agenda in Washington D.C. and of course rightly so from the U.S. perspective. But nevertheless, I think Sweden and Finland will always try to say that don't forget Russia. Russia is the imminent military threat, not only to its neighboring countries, but also to stability in other parts and regions of the world. So that's the imminent threat. We do not see a Chinese military threat as imminent. In the long run, certainly, if the buildup is continuing, etc., etc. But don't forget that Russia is still benefiting a lot from its program where they modernized the entire armed forces, and Russia will continue to benefit from that modernization program for the next 10-15 years. Although their economy is going down the drain, it will still benefit from those, because they were carefully crafted and they were carefully planned and they were carefully executed plans to modernize their armed forces. So we will keep reminding everyone in DC as well about the importance of keeping an eye on Russia. Of course, understanding that China is at the top of the agenda here in this city.
That's an extremely important point. I think for the U.S. was largely sort of asleep at the wheel until 2014, as to the threat from Russia, and that of course is driving the decisions that you talked about, as well as Mari at the beginning, about defense investment, major procurements, doubling conscription over the next few years, returning to Gotland, some of these things. Yep. And we have a question from the audience about cyber. So sort of your concern about cyber attacks from Russia targeting specifically infrastructure, as we saw in Ukraine, targeting energy providers, shutting down the power grid and whatnot. But I would also expand that out to perhaps you could just flesh out a little more both of your nations' sort of total defense concept about preparing the society to be resilient to some of the hybrid threats that we're facing from Russia, these attacks on sort of really our very institutions, and some of these other hybrid means that they might be utilized. That would be helpful perhaps to the audience.
Well, very much what I already referred to a bit, that basically hybrid influencing obviously can use hybrid, can use cyber, hybrid can use any kind of influencing or threat. It's not a new concept. We've seen it before over the years, but obviously the technology, the means of doing this kind of things has evolved and has made it more challenging. That's why the whole of society approach to many of these things is all the more important, when you really need to be resistant and resilient in every sector of society. And I think we've followed that approach over the years. It's not a new thing. It's not a new invention. You basically just can build based on that kind of thinking when countering new type of threats. So I think that goes from the education, that goes to the civil fields of society, and I think when you consider the vulnerabilities or weaknesses in the society, that's how you basically strengthen the whole of society, when you try to just take all the sectors and make sure that they're ready to resist in a way in this field.
Well, I think when it comes to cyber and the hybrid threats, as Mari referred to, for us, it's very much in line with what we have to do with the build-up of the civil defense again in Sweden, of course. One of the measures that we will take is to establish a new agency for psychological warfare, and they will deal with a lot of the cyber issues, of course, in this. Not only possible election influence or trying to influence elections, but also the whole psychology of warfare when it comes to indoctrination, when it comes to having the truth out, and all of these things in society at large. So there will be a new agency established in 2022 in Sweden as part of the new defense bill to deal with all of this. We used to have such an agency. We did away with it a couple of decades ago, but we're now reintroducing that kind of agency to deal with those threats. What we do in the military field is to put even more money and effort into, and training also into cyber defense capabilities, both on the defensive side, but also on the offensive side, to be able to develop the offensive side of the cyber defense capabilities in order to counter those attacks from if it be Russia or anybody else that will perform these ones. We should be able to counter them also with offensive matters or means from the military side. So that will be strengthened also by the new defense bill.
Thank you. That's very helpful for both of you around that concept. I think I would be remiss, of course, if I didn't talk a little more about the Arctic, which both of you touched on in your remarks. Of course, your Arctic nations, as well as Baltic nations, and the geopolitical situation in the Arctic region is shifting rapidly as well. You've both, in your official documents, expressed a commitment to working towards an Arctic which remains peaceful and a region of cooperation. But could you talk a little bit about how you're preparing for security contingencies? I know, for instance, there was the Northern Wind exercises above the Arctic Circle last year. Can you talk to how you're planning to respond to any future security threats in the Arctic? I know, Magnus, you mentioned, of course, Russia's buildup in the Arctic region. Can you talk a little bit about how you're sort of balancing that desire to keep the region peaceful, but also preparing for contingencies?
Of course, I mean, this is something, as you said, we have a very strong interest in keeping the Arctic region as a peaceful region and as a region for science and for those things to develop, and of course to keep the Arctic Council as it is, not to introduce the security and defense policy dimension into the Arctic Council. We believe that would be a mistake to do that. We could, of course, meet with Russia on the interests of climate change and, of course, of battling climate change, and that is particularly pronounced in the Arctic region, of course. So those areas, I think we can work within the Arctic Council on climate and on science and the peaceful use of resources. When it comes to the security and the military dimensions, I think from our perspective, talking from a Swedish perspective, we see this, of course, as a common undertaking. We will have to work together if there is a security or a military threat to the Arctic region. And this is something that neither Sweden nor Finland nor Norway can handle on its own. This is something that we have to do together and in cooperation and in coalition, if that is the case. It's also something that I think we, talking to Mari has to correct me if I'm wrong, but Sweden and Finland, I think we can benefit from having that discussion within NATO and together with NATO as well in our enhanced opportunities partner setting to actually talk about the Arctic. I know that NATO is also coming to more and more of discussions on the Arctic and how to deal with security threats in the Arctic, because NATO member states, of course, are Arctic states as well, some of them. So So this is something that I think we can discuss together also in the setting of the EUP, together with NATO countries.
Yes, I can only echo Magnus. I think we're both Arctic countries, so basically whatever we do in the defense, our defense capabilities are basically functioning in the Arctic, in the whole country. We don't need separate specific Arctic forces or anything. So just to sort of clarify, but basically this is very much what I was already saying also before, that Arctic is linked to our region. We are linked to Arctic region, and we would very much see it necessary to discuss these issues with NATO as well. Obviously, the EU is also an important actor in this discussion, more so, but definitely NATO discussion in terms of the military is something we would see pertinent as well.
Very helpful comments, and Magnus, I think in particular this discussion of NATO needing to take on a more robust role, or at least discussion of their role. It's sort of an under-discussed flank of the NATO alliance, and frankly, I thought that the recent report was a little thin on the Arctic front, disappointingly, but would definitely welcome Finland and Sweden pushing that higher onto the agenda through the enhanced opportunity partnership. And another area I think that will be interesting to keep an eye on the next few years, of course, is Russia taking over the chairmanship, the rotating chairmanship of the Arctic Council, I think next year. So I would be curious, are there areas that you think that Russia may focus on in their program that that may be fruitful for collaboration? Magnus, you mentioned climate. Of course, Russia has had some pretty unfortunate environmental spills and whatnot in the Arctic region over the past few years, which of course were going to affect the whole regional ecosystem. So do you have any insight into where you think Russia is going to sort of focus their efforts and their chairmanship at all?
Well, no, I can't say I have any insights into the Russian programming for the next year, but if they are serious about having a discussion on climate and climate change in the Arctic, and also the protection of the Arctic environment, and of course of the polar ice cap as such, it's something that I mean, we would from the Swedish government side, we would be extremely interested in pursuing that agenda, of course, together with Russia and the other Arctic states in the Arctic Council. So this is I think the main area where there's potential for enormous progress in terms of the discussions in the Arctic Council as well. And I guess we can find ways of doing that. I know that the US has had its hesitations on this as well, but I think there are ways to take that discussion forward and to come into action as well on the changing of climate and the effects of climate change on the polar ice cap, for example.
Perhaps I think we have time for maybe a couple more questions here from the audience. So I'll ask maybe both of these at the same time. The first one is about the UK's role in the region, security role with both of your nations. Of course, the UK is actively involved in enhanced forward presence in Estonia, leading that multinational battalion there. Can you talk a little bit about your security partnership with the British? I think that would be one question that we had asked from the audience. And then the second one really is about the enhanced opportunity partnership. So, of course, Finland and Sweden are as close to NATO as any non-member state can possibly be. Do you think, however, your countries will reach sort of a natural limiting wall in terms of your cooperation with NATO? I mean, you continue to push this cooperation forward. Do you think that there are other areas that that you can continue to involve that cooperation? Of course, I put my cards on the table. I'd love to see both of your nations join the alliance. one day as full member states. But just curious, how do you see that relationship evolving short of membership? Thank you.
If I answer briefly to these questions. First, UK. Obviously, the relationship with the UK is very important, and it will be even more important to secure the security cooperation with them once they sadly leave the EU. So they are in a little bit different situation from the EU days, but we definitely cooperate with them. They're important. We're participating in this multilateral sort of arrangement led by them, which is important for the also for the Northern Europe. NATO partnership, as discussed already, we are very interested in using all these opportunities, obviously, to enhance the partnership. It's I think the EOP. I was just jokingly saying it should be maybe endless opportunities partnership, but maybe not officially. No, I think you can build on that. You can continue to find new forms of cooperation. And we just mentioned the Arctic. I mean, there are important dimensions that always come, new sort of questions that need to be brought into the partnership field as well. So we definitely hope more development and being part of the discussion. And like I referred to the US national defense strategy, the importance of partners. It's the same for NATO. I think NATO benefits from partners, and it is a win-win situation to both sides. So I would count on the interest of NATO to develop these partnerships further as well. Thanks.
Well, firstly, on the UK question, I mean, we have a strong relationship with the UK on security policy and defense policy matters, and of course, as I mean, both Sweden and Finland participates in the Joint Expeditionary Force, the JEF, that the UK is running, and of course the importance of I think also to keep, as Mari alluded to keep the UK in the loop when we talk security and defense in the European Union. I think that there's a need to always have UK in the discussion as well, albeit they're leaving the union. So I would see only the possibility of strengthening our relationship. We have a memorandum of understanding together with the UK as well on defense policy and matters, and it's a long list of things we can do. We regularly exercise together, and we have a lot of training and exercises exchanges between us. When it comes to enhanced operational partnership, I guess of course the Arctic security and the High North, as we said, but I think also closer discussions and more in-depth discussions on the security policy and defense policy aspects of the Baltic Sea region, how to defend the Baltic Sea region in the case that should be needed. I think there are opportunities and analysis that can be beneficial to take in a setting of NATO +2 in that respect. So and also if I talk from a bilateral standpoint, Sweden, NATO, it is the express intent in the defense bill, as I said, to coordinate operational planning together with NATO as an organization. We would like to have a system where we coordinate our operational planning, our contingency planning together with NATO. And if we, of course, do that, UK comes in there as well. As I mentioned, Denmark, Norway, UK, US, and NATO are those who are expressly mentioned in the new defense bill, who we would like to have coordinated operational planning together with. So I think there are matters or there are areas where we can definitely go more in depth, and areas where we can start a new discussion also, but not only discussing on the policy level, but also actually coming down to doing some work on the floor in terms of planning and coordinated planning aspects.
Great. Well, that was a terrific way, I think, to sort of end the discussion. We touched on a whole number of areas in terms of Baltic and Arctic security, heard about some of the very important investments, how the trilateral partnership is deepened, how your partnership with NATO has strengthened over the past few years. And I hope that we're here in a year talking about further partnership enhancements. And so I just want to thank you both, Mari and Magnus, for taking part in this discussion with the Heritage Foundation. Thank you to our audience for being here, and we hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day.